Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, yesterday what we learned is about one example. I given you some task. Have you tried? Yeah, able to finish all of them? No. So, at the end of session, I will share a link of Drive Classroom. You can upload your example there. I will check. So it's just not done. We just learned one sample with events by accessing the data from fake store. We will create our own. That means in the next levels, we will create our own database. We will keep the data in the database. We will write our own API methods and we will use that and we design all the CRUD operations, reading, inserting, updating, deleting, everything. We will manually design all the API concept ourselves. But that is just to get an idea of how you can use the skills of your events, your JavaScript, string methods, array methods, object methods to manipulate. So today, after understanding all these concept, actually you are now aware of the major concepts. So you learned about React components and you learned how to deal with, means till now, you learned how to deal with data binding and style binding and class binding, event binding. These are the concepts you learned related to React. So up to now in React, we discussed about all these concepts. So data binding, we have seen one way and two way, style, class bindings, how they work, and complete event binding, how synthetic events work and use, right? Now we need to understand another concept, and that is we will see the concept of React hooks. We are going to learn about the concept of React hooks. So here uh, two topics are there. You should not get confused with that. Actually, in React, we have React is having life cycle hooks and React hooks. These two are actually different. Both are not same. Life cycle hooks are different and hooks are different. So React life cycle hooks are related to class components. They are related to class. Hooks are related to function components. They are related to the function component. So both are not same because sometimes you may be confused with the question asked by interviewer. Because hooks are not allowed in classes, lifecycle hooks are not present as directly in functions. They're different. Here we are not learning lifecycle hooks, we are learning React hooks. Right? Lifecycle hooks is another topic. We will see how it works in next level. First, technically, what is the concept of hook? Actually, we used use effect. We used use state. So you used use state. What is it? What is use state? For what purpose? Huh? We discussed so many points now. Means what it does, what it will do from one component to another. What use state purpose is, use state allocates a memory. In that memory, you can store some data so that you can use that across requests. Why you need memory through use state? Because the web applications are stateless. They cannot have data between requests. These all points are given. You please go through them. Every point I given. Why you need a state? What is HTTP stateless protocol? I explained detailed points I given. Go through them. So what use state hook is doing? It is allocating memory. In that memory, it is allowing to store some value. It is providing the value across the requests and allowing to access and use that value. That means it is already having some business logic. Some logic is working internally. It is allocating memory means it is doing some work. It is storing the data in memory. It is accessing data from the memory. That means it is doing everything internally. So technically, if anything is already built in with ready-made functionality and ready-made behavior, what it is called as. In a software technology, if anything is already built, it is having certain functionality and you are just using it according to your requirements in an application, then what do you call it as? Question understood? In a software technology, if already something is built in with some logic and with some functionalities, behaviors, and you are just using it, and what it is called as? Technically, we call it as a service. That means actually hook is a service. Technically, hook is a service. Generally, in React, we call hook as a service. In software technologies, what is a service? In software technologies, what is a service? How you define a service? For example, I am designing a login screen or a registration form, login form or registration form. What is the threat with that form is a robot can use that form. That means a robot can open your login form or registration form and it can fill and register. So to prevent robots, we use CAPTCHA. Am I right? What is the CAPTCHA you have seen in registration login forms? CAPTCHA will be there. What is CAPTCHA? CAPTCHA is verifying whether the user is a human or a robot. How? That means it is using some artificial intelligence program in the background to verify the keystrokes and mouse movement, how user is moving the mouse, how keystrokes are entered. Based on that, it can know that it is not human keystrokes because robots have a certain pattern. Robots move in a certain pattern. Robots have a certain keystroke pattern. Then it can understand that, okay, this is not a human. That means how a website knows you are saying I am not a robot. Is it seeing you? Then how it knows that you are not a robot? Can it feel you? Then that means it is verifying through your selections, your mouse movement. It is doing it. That means it is an artificial intelligence program which is built with some logic and functionality which verifies whether it is a human or a robot. Can you write such program? For that, you need to have a knowledge of artificial intelligence. And it is very risky to write such program, very lengthy program, randomly generating different number codes and showing you, verifying whether you are a human or not. All such things are very complex things. So then what they do? Somebody built it, somebody provided all the logic and behavior. Just what you need to do, you need to inject and use in your project. So CAPTCHA, if anybody asks like, do you know how to write code for CAPTCHA? That is a wrong question because CAPTCHA is not a code to write. It is a service to implement. It is a service to implement. What is a service technically? Service is a predefined business logic. Business logic. Service is a predefined business logic which you can inject, customize, and implement according to the requirements. It is a predefined business logic which can inject, customize, which you can inject, customize, and implement according to the requirements. That means now what is advantage of this service? That means you are not writing any logic. Logic is already written. Just you are injecting it, implementing it, and customizing according to your requirements. So what is the use of a service? So what is the advantage of service? Service enables reusability. Reusability. It enables extensibility. So it enables testability. It enables maintainability. These are all the features. These are all the features of maintainability. These are all the features of service. So service is a predefined business logic. What is the advantage is it allows you to reuse, it is allowed to easy to extend, easy to test, easy to maintain. That means without writing, you can just use the existing logic and we can implement according to the requirements. That's what the concept is actually. Suppose you know we have Google reCAPTCHA. Yeah, we have Google reCAPTCHA. This is Google reCAPTCHA. CAPTCHA is provided by so many people. Google also provides. This is Google reCAPTCHA. So what is this is? This is a free service. Google reCAPTCHA is a free service that protects your site from spam and other abuse. That is spam because of robots, mostly robots. You know the full form. Completely automated public tuning test that tells computers and humans apart. That is the full form of CAPTCHA. Completely automated public tuning test that tells computers and humans already built in. So you are a Java developer, you are a .NET developer, Python, PHP developer. For everyone, service is not same. For Java, it will give a Java logic, .NET logic, PHP logic, JavaScript logic. Through that, you can import the libraries and implement this capture. For example, these kind of services are very common in web development. For example, you opened a website. They ask you to register and log in to watch their content. You are not interested in registering. Then they will ask you that you can please log in with your Google account. You don't register, you use your Google account. So a website is asking my Google account to log in. So that means you can use Google account in another website to log in. What is this service called as? You can use your Facebook account to sign in. You can use your Google account to sign in into other websites without registering in them. Actually, what those websites will do from the Google people, they will fetch your data because you are using your Google account in that. What that service is called as? That means in a website, they are asking to log in with Google account. You can use your Google account to log in and use their service. What that service is called as? Actually, we call that service as OpenID. OpenID is a service. By using this service, what you can do, you can use Google account, Facebook account, or other accounts to log in into a website. These are all services. So, for example, you want CAPTCHA or these kind of OpenIDs. Several third parties will provide. You have to use them, inject them into your project. So, technically, Hook is like a service. It is already built in with certain functionalities. You have to just use it. Actually, this service uh, this service is built in this way. Usually what happens is, for example, we have some values and we have some functions. These values and functions we want to use in one application. That means in an application, we want to use these functions and values. Then I want to reuse them again and again in different places, different situations. I want to use them again and again. So we don't directly use them in our application. Usually what we do, we build generally by using these values and functions. A set of values and functions are collected and we keep in a factory. We call it as a factory. That means we build one factory. A factory is a set of functions and values. For example, string factory. String factory have all string functions like to uppercase, to lowercase, substring, slice, index of, last index of. Math factory, it is having math functions like SQRT, power, so sine, cos, tan, all these average. We have array factory, array methods like push, pop, splice. That means all set of functions are kept in a factory. Now there can be several factories for different purpose. Different factories are present. We can have different factories. These factories are injected. These factories are injected into a service. These factories are injected into a service. A set of factories are injected into a service. Now this service contains collection of factories and factory contains collection of values and functions. We will inject this service into application so that we can use those values and functions. If any interviewer asks like, why can't you inject a factory? Because factory is already having set of values and functions. Why can't you directly inject a factory and use it? Why you are injecting factory into service and you are using the service in your project? Remember, every library is built like this because you are using React like libraries. For 10-15 years experienced person in React like technology, this is the question we ask. That means why you are using a service in an application? Why not a factory? That means now we can understand his level of architectural design. That means how much he knows the architecture of a library because he is working on a library from 10 years. And library is built with factories and services. Now the question for him is why can't we use a factory? It is also a set of values and functions. We can directly inject that factory and use it. Why we are injecting factory in a service and using a service? Because in our React everywhere what we used hooks. And what we call these hooks are now we calling them as service. Why you are using service? Why not the factories? What is the reason? Simple. Actually, factory, why not factory? Because factory uses a single call mechanism and service uses a singleton mechanism. It uses a singleton mechanism. What is the difference between a factory and a service? Factory uses single call mechanism. Single call mechanism means you want a function. When you want a function, it will create one object. Through that object, it will call the function and give that to application. After that, the function object is deleted. That means after the functionality completed, the object is deleted. So that means actually it's a different complete scenario here. Suppose what is the concept is, suppose we are having some client resources. This is suppose this is an application. This is application. We have some resource. I am explaining single call singleton. Now what happens is I want to access this resource. So this is for example, this is some example. Let's say, yeah, this is like user one and this is like some user two. So now I want to access this resource. Now what happens is user one want to access this resource. Then what it will do? It is going to create one object. Through that object, it will give access. Now user two wants to use the same resource. Then what happens? It will create another object and through that object, it will give access to that resource. That means for every user, it will create one object separately. That means for every request, it is going to create a separate object. That object will work only for that request. And after that, it is deleted. This is called single call. Single call mechanism means an object is created for every request and it will work only for that request. Now singleton mechanism is nothing but an object is created for the first request. Suppose I will give here an object is created for first request. The same object is used for other requests. The same object is used for the other requests. That means all will be working on only one object. When object is created for the first request and the same object is used across requests. This mechanism is called as what? Singleton. I will give one example. You are different people with different user accounts. You are watching a video on YouTube. From your account, you will log in into YouTube. From another account, another person will log in into YouTube. And you like the video. This like is visible to others, right? You watched the video, that view is visible to others. How? Different accounts. How your account like is visible to another person who logged in with his account. That means, and the like is how first it will say that just now uploaded, be first to like. No? It will give an option, be first to like. You click on like, then counter starts. That means object is created. The same object is used for second, third, fourth. This mechanism is what? Singleton. Singleton means an object is created for the first request and the same object is used across requests. What is the difference between a factory and a service? Factory uses a single call mechanism. That is not great because every time I need to create an object to use a function. But service, once you create, it is available until you end. Until you end. This is the mechanism of an service. That is the mechanism of service. This is technically service. That means actually service uses singleton pattern. Service uses singleton pattern. An object is created for the first request and same object is used across requests. Across requests. Service uses a singleton pattern. So object is created for the first request and the same object is used across requests. So hook is using this pattern. That means every hook that you use in React is using a singleton pattern. That means you defined use state, you defined use effect, you defined use reference. They are created for the first request and that is maintained across any number of requests. That means is state created every time when I click a button? No. State is created at the time of creating the component. Once creating the component, state is created and it is available across any number of requests. That means everywhere we are using the state. But when the state is created on the time of mounting. That means when component is created, state is created. Is it created every time when you change a drop down? Is it created every time when you click a button? No. You are using set state now. Set state means, is it creating and storing the data in state? No. State is created at the time of creating component. It is using the state. That means any number of times you can use the state, but it is created only once. It is created only once. Any number of times you can use the state, but it is created only once. That is what singleton. That means every hook internally follows a singleton band. Remember, fresher don't need to know all this. Just fresher need to know what are the hooks available, how they work. But at experience level, these are the questions for React people. That's the reason you need to know little bit architectural related concepts. Means how they are built. Because we can create our own hooks, which I will show you how we design them. What are the points? So technically service is a predefined business logic which you can implement, inject and use in your project, right? So service uses which pattern? It uses an singleton pattern. Singleton. Actually, service implements dependency injection mechanism. Service implements dependency injection mechanism. Generally, we give DI, dependency injection mechanism. Service implements a DI mechanism, dependency injection mechanism. Means actually service works with this mechanism. How a service works? Service works with a dependency injection mechanism. Which design pattern service uses? Singleton. And how the service works with a dependency injection mechanism. Actually, dependency injection, how it works. So, DI dependency injection comprises of various components. So, it comprises of various components like you have a consumer, you have a provider, we have a injector. So, dependency injection mainly depends on these three components. We have a consumer, we have a provider, and we have a injector. Dependency injection completely depends on this: the consumer, the provider, and the injector. So, consumer is nothing but consumer is the component which uses your service. That means service is used by a consumer. Then who is provider and who is injector? Every service have a provider. So that means actually internally some providers will be there. Later you will create your own providers also. For example, you say use state. And in the use state, suppose how the syntax constant. Suppose I given message, set message is equal to use state. Use state. And here we have some message like this we have. Now what happens? What use state service purpose is? It allocates memory. So for that memory, it will give a reference name. That means memory have a reference name MSG. That is the memory reference name. In that it will store this data. That means it stores that welcome in that data. That means now what happens is we want to access and use this data. Then what we are doing? So in a paragraph, using a binding expression, we are displaying that MSG. Am I right? We are using that MSG. Now, when you write this, what happens is it is going to look for this reference in the memory, means in the state. It will collect the value from the memory. The value is welcome and it will display the value here. That means it is going to look for that particular value in the memory. First, it will check is there any memory by that name. If there is a memory by that name, it will collect the value from the memory and it will display the value. Who? I am saying that it is going to verify. It is going to verify whether there is a memory by that name. If there is a memory by that name, it will go into that memory. It will locate the memory. Locating the memory, accessing data from the memory, and then providing that data to you. Who, who is doing this? A provider is doing this. A provider is doing. Every service internally have a provider. What is the job of provider? The job of provider is to look for the value in the memory. That means in the memory, if any value is stored, going to that memory, accessing the value from the memory is done by provider. Is done by provider. That means you generally say, I store value in a variable. I access value from a variable. How, who is locating the value, who is locating the memory. If that memory is not found, it will show one message saying that reference error. That means there is no memory by the name MSG. Who is doing all this? This is internally managed by a provider. So what is the job of a provider? The job of a provider, that means who is consumer? Here the key points. So consumer is a component that uses the service. Consumer is a component that uses the service. Provider is a component responsible for locating the value in memory, is responsible for locating the reference and value in memory. Provider is a component responsible for locating the reference and value in the memory. So that is the provider. Provider will just locate the value. That means provider is going to say that, okay, I found this value, and it can collect the value. But how this value is given to the consumer? That means how we give the value, how we show the value, how we use the value. That is the job of injector. What injector is going to do? Injector injects the value into component, locating the value, accessing the value, and injecting the value into component. That is done by injector. So every service works like this. Every service works with a dependency injection mechanism. Dependency injection means it verifies where is the dependency, identifies the dependency, and locates the dependency and injects the dependency. Dependency is nothing but what is required for this particular purpose. That means generally many times dependency injection is not a new thing. It is there everywhere. Wherever you are using the concept of object oriented programming, everywhere this dependency injection is there. You create an object for class, then what will happen? When you create an object for class, then what will happen? Through that object you can access the members of class. How? Di. Who locates the class? In memory. Who access the values from the class from memory? Who provides you those values to use? This is all Di. That means many people have a wrong idea about this. Generally they think dependency injection is a concept of Angular, React, or MVC, some topics. It's a general OOP concept. There is no OOP without DI. That means some people even give one program. They will put a heading, dependency injection program. This is a program for dependency injection. That's a silly thing, right? Dependency injection is there everywhere. If you are creating a component reusable, that means it is using dependency injection. Anything reusable, that means it is using dependency injection. So if anybody asks what are the features of dependency injection, reusability, extensibility, maintainability, these are all the features of dependency injection. Every service internally works with these three components major: the consumer, the provider, and the injector. There will be so many others. We have observers and all, so many. But I'm not going that much in depth into this. So consumer, provider, injector. These are the three basic points. Okay. Now the concept is, so what is the purpose of this services in our React. That means what is the function here now? So the hook is a service, and service is a predefined business logic. It uses which pattern? Singleton pattern. It uses which mechanism? Dependency injection mechanism. What is the main purpose of this? Is to enable reusability. Easy reusable, easy extendable, everything we can manage by using these services. Technically, we can do that. Now, what is the point is React JS, React from 17x version provides predefined predefined hooks to handle various functionalities. To handle different functionalities, they provide predefined hooks. It is going to provide different types of hooks. Earlier we don't have these hooks, so it provides predefined hooks to handle various functionalities. We have several predefined hooks like use state, like use effect, like use ref, like use memo. So many, we will see them. So use callback. So we have like use context, use reducer. Different types of hooks are built in. Ready-made hooks are present. What about use formic? That is not a React hook. It is a third party. Yesterday you saw use form. They are not inbuilt React hooks. They are all third party. That means third party libraries provide so many hooks. So what is confusion for React learner is sometimes React people think that all the hooks are provided by React. That is not correct, because React have only some limited. So it have a set of 10, 12, some regularly used hooks, and other are not React related hooks. They are third party. That means now for that we can't tell a definition state, right? For that we cannot tell a definition, because sometimes the hooks are custom made. That means you can use these ready-made hooks. You can create your own hooks. So React allows to create custom hooks. To create custom hooks. It allows to create custom hooks. React allows to create custom hooks. That means you can create your own hooks and you can use them for various reasons, various purpose. That is the reason sometimes when you are working in a project of React, you will see your project people are using some hook. Then you will immediately get a doubt like, why I haven't learned this in my class? And you will now go Google and search for that hook. You will not find anything about it. Now you are confused, like these people are using in Google, it is not showing anything. My faculty never told me about this. Am I missing anything? That means haven't I learned complete React.js? Right? That is a custom hook. That means they given their own names. How do others know about it? That means we are not sure about what hooks you created. You can create your own hook. In real world projects, we created our own hooks for different reasons. Because certain functionalities we need regularly, then what we do, we create a hook and we use it in our project and nobody knows about it. That means no interviewer can ask, do you know the hook that we designed? How I know what you designed? You tell me about that. Right? That means many things we are inbuilt having, those we can tell. And custom made, how do we know? That is, we have to know about that hook, how they designed, what they designed in their documentations, and we need to implement them. Now we will see first how hooks are created. We will create our own hook. Then we will see how to use existing. Because if you know how a hook is created, then you can know easily its functionality, its behavior, if you can create the hooks. So we will see how to create a custom hook now, how to create our own hooks. And for that, so many rules are there. That means we have certain important rules. These, you can say, these are the rules for creating and using hooks. We have some rules for creating and using hooks. What are the rules for creating and using hooks? So what are the rules for creating and using the hooks? Let's see. The first important point is hook is a function. Hook is a function of JavaScript. Hook is a function of JavaScript. That means it's a JavaScript function. Hook is a function. How hooks are designed? By using JavaScript function. JavaScript function. That is the first basic point. It is a JavaScript function. Second point, that means you can create hooks only by using functions. Using functions, you can create a hook. Second point, a hook function cannot be void. A hook function cannot be void. That means you cannot have a hook as void. Usually function can be void, but a hook, if you are designing function for a hook, that means it cannot be void. What does it means? It cannot be void means it must return something. It should return some functionality. So that means it must return any functionality. It must return any functionality or value. It must return any functionality or value. I hope you already learnt in JavaScript. Can a function can return function? Yes, a function can return function also. So you can have a hook. Means hook is a JavaScript function. It cannot be void. It means it must return a functionality or value. Another important, it is configured and used only at high level, in a in code snippet. So it is configured and used only at high level in code snippet. That means you cannot define at block level. You cannot define at block level. It's not possible. Only at high level. You cannot define at block levels. At block levels, you cannot define the hooks. It is defined only at high level. It is defined at high level. What does it means? For example, we have a function called load products. That is function. What we are doing in this function, we are configuring a constant state. Means MSG, set MSG is equal to use state. We are configuring some message like this. Now this is invalid. That is invalid. You cannot declare, you cannot configure any hook inside any block. It can be defined only at high level. High level means what? Only at function level. You cannot have inside in any block, in an if condition, in a loop, or in any another function of your component. You cannot do that. That means actually this function usually where it is, generally this function is present at the block level. That means this is your component. No? This is your component level. In the component, you have a function. In that function, you are trying to declare some hook, which is not possible. That means where you have to define You have to define this outside. You have to define that outside. That means you cannot configure inside any block. Only at function level you can configure. You cannot define in any block. That means inside a if condition or inside another function you are trying to configure a hook, it will not work. That means always the hook is configured and defined inside this. Even you remembered we created use reference. When we created use reference, how I done? I created use reference let some thread is equal to use ref. If I try to create this inside any function, it is invalid. You can't. You cannot create that inside any function. You have to create only at higher level. Only at higher level you can define. That is one important concept. So later we will create it. So how it works, we will create and use it. Actually, when you are dealing with these components, yeah, suppose we have some components. Yeah, I am creating some reference. Actually, our last one that we worked is in index, we have a hook demo, hook form demo. Okay, that is. Now here I need to configure some, I need to configure some state or something. Suppose I need to configure some reference, let some thread is equal to what is it? Use ref, and by default I given as null. That means what is our intention on submit click? We need to allocate a memory, and in that memory we want to store some data. That is our intention. That means we are configuring this, right? So we are trying to configure a hook inside a block, inside a function or inside the block. Actually, it should be outside. It should be outside. We are trying to configure this inside. So, and you are trying to use that anywhere else you want to use that and define. Using means we should use some use effect. I'm using an use effect. It is still processing. Let it process first. You can see now an error came, and see the error, and you can read this error, right? You can read the error. So the error is React hook use ref is called in a function. It is called in a function. Is called in a function. So submit. That means in a submit function it is called. That means this use ref is called in a submit function. It is saying that that is neither a React function component or it is a custom React hook function. And you observe here, actually use ref is imported. So here we will import use ref. How do you import use ref? So it is showing error. There is no use ref. What is it? Import. What is import? Use ref. I'm importing use ref. From where? So from React. From React, we are importing use ref. Actually, use ref. So use effect. These are all imported from React. These are all imported from React. Now use ref we are importing here, and you see we are calling that use ref. So you can see still there is an error in this. Suppose I am making this available. I am making this available outside. That means I am configuring it outside. That means I am not defining inside. Now, no problem. If I try to configure a hook inside, then it is not available because you can't configure, call, and use any hook inside any block, any function, any block. It can be only at a higher level. It can be only at higher level. That means at function level. You can't define anywhere else. That is one basic rule you should know. So accidentally or intentionally, whenever you are trying to declare some state or reference inside a function, it's not possible. You have to do it outside, right? Next important point is another important about the hook is, so hook function name must use a camel case. Must use a camel case. It is also mandatory. When you create a hook, the function name must use a camel case. And hook name is recommended to start with prefix use. It is with the prefix use. Recommended to start with prefix use. You should start with use and it should be in camel case. You cannot use uppercase, all lowercase or title case, every word first letter capital like that you cannot give. It must be in camel case. Camel case, you know. It should start with a lowercase and can have an uppercase. So this is the camel case. You cannot have like this. You cannot have like this. So it must be in camel case. It must be defined in camel case. Recommended. It is not mandatory. And why it is recommended? Because in the library, the provider maps to the word use. If you don't use the same word use, then mapping will fail. Now, why I said it is not mandatory? Because that mapping we can change. That means we can change that mapping. That means we can map with a different word also. That is the reason it is not mandatory, because it can be customized. It can be customized. It is recommended. Default, it is recommended because the provider will look for the hooks in the memory only when they have the prefix called use. Can we change that? We can change that. Recently, they are changing it. I already told you in React 19, the hooks are changing. All hooks that you are going to learn in React 18, in the next version of React 19, they are going to change. They already initiated it. Complete change. That means there is no more use state. There is no more use effect. They have completely started the initiation of changing the hooks now. That means once it is ready, we will see. By the end of React, I will show you if beta version is, currently it is in beta release. And if it is in beta release, so by the time we finish, it may come with a new version. So new, then I will explain. We will download that beta and we will check what changes they are making. I will show you overview about that. But they are changing. They completely changed now. That means in React 19 onwards, hooks will change. It is 100% sure that they changed. So up to 18, you can use that. Now from later onwards, what they are doing is, I'll just give an overview point. They are using just only use word. And in that use function, you can say state or you can say effect. You can use anything inside that use. That is the new concept. That means there is just only use. There is just only use. So it is always recommended to define the prefix as what? Use. Prefix as use. And another point is, you can use all React hooks and third-party libraries inside hook. You can use all React hooks and third-party libraries inside hook. That means you can build a hook which uses existing hooks. That means it can use existing hooks and it can work. So these are all the rules to configure a hook. That means if you want to create a hook, then these are all the basic rules. So let's see how to do this. That means how we can create a hook and custom hooks. How do you design the custom hook? And one more major concept is you cannot use hooks in class component. So hook can run only in function component. That is the key point. Hooks, you cannot use hooks in class component. And hook can run only in function component. Right. And hooks are available from 17x version. Hence, you cannot import and use hooks in earlier versions. You cannot import and use in earlier versions. These are all basic things you should know. You have to write your own functions, factories. You have to depend on that. And earlier, they used to use lot of classes. And classes cannot use functions, right? Later, actually in JavaScript, you learned about classes. What is a class? What are the restrictions of class? We will see one overview about that, because once we learned all the concept about how to create a component with function, we will learn how to create a component with class. For that, we need to ask. Yeah. So if anybody asks like why hooks are not available in a class component, obviously that means if you ask this question means you don't know about class in JavaScript, right? What is the basic rule of class? What are the class members in JavaScript? JavaScript class member can be an property or a method or a constructor or an accessor. Only 4. Can we have a variable as class member? No. Can we have a function as class member? No. So these are all the basic rules you should know. That means these are not allowed, right? Okay, now let's see how to create a hook for different purpose. For example, suppose I will go to index.js. In this, I will keep a component which is already designed. We have a login component. And we have a login component. This is a login component. In this login component, let me go to this login component. And here I am adding a data list, data term. So verify code and data definition. Okay, now what I want is here I want a random code. So that means I want to generate one random code. I want to create a random code. Some 6-digit random code should come. Random number should come. Then I want this everywhere. In login, in change password, in register, everywhere I want the random code. Then what we will do is we will create a hook by ourselves. Okay, so what we will do, go to src, and in that we will create a new folder, hooks. You can give any name, doesn't matter. And in this we are keeping a name, a new file. And what is this file name? So I will give the file, so some captcha hook.js. Captcha hook.js. That means function means, function is kept in which file? JavaScript file. Function is in a module. In a module, you need to define a function. That means now how do you create? So export function and use captcha. That is a hook. This is a hook function. That means according to the rule of hooks, we given in a camel case. We given in a camel case. But still it is not having a hook behavior. It is not having a hook behavior. Why? Because it is currently void. And what it has to return? According to the rules, a hook cannot be void. It cannot be void. So what we will do? We will create code. And this code is a string. It is a string. And what we will do is we will return this code. That's the captcha. That means it is a code and we are returning the code. We are returning the code. Remember, when you create a hook, hook can be parameterized or parameterless. That means you can have parameterized hooks, parameterless hooks. It can be parameterized or parameterless. So one more important point is hook function can be parameterless or parameterize. So if a function, if hook is parameterized, then every parameter is a required parameter. That means there is no chance that you can ignore any parameter. If you defined a function, a hook with parameters, then every parameter is mandatory. You cannot have an optional parameter. That means you can't skip parameters. That is possible in TypeScript. In TypeScript, we can have optional parameters. We will learn that in TypeScript, but it is not possible in JavaScript. So you cannot define. So now what we are doing here is, okay, now we will use our basic JavaScript logic functionality. What is the JavaScript functionality is how you generate a code and return the code. Just I will use some option like, so the code is equal to, we will use math.round and math.random. That is the random, math.random into 10. That's what we are using. Actually, in JavaScript, math.random is a function which renders a random number. And usually random number starts with a fractional value, 0.7 and 76 like that. In that case, we want a positive number. That means we need a number. So I multiplied with 10. And it will not return any fractional values. I will use only integer values. So I am using round. Round will not allow to return a fractional value. It will return only one number. So like this, I need a combination of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. That's the number. That means I just have a 6 digit, 6 characters randoms. You can use alphabets. That means you know alphabet codes 65 to 90, right? 97 to 122, lowercase, uppercase. With that codes, you can generate random numbers. Random alphabets also you can generate. So technically, this is okay. This is a simple one. We created a captcha hook. Now I need to use this very small concept here. Now I need to use this hook in my component. Then how do we use this in your component? So first what you have to do, you have to import. Import what to import? We need to import. So the use captcha. Use captcha is the hook. We have to import. From where to import? We have to import from, what is it? It is in dot dot slash. It is not dot dot slash, dot dot slash. In that, what this is again dot dot slash. Here we have hooks. In this captcha hook, we need to import from here. That means now usually you know that this is general JavaScript module system. What is the module name? Module name will be actually us. Yeah. What will be the module name usually here is? 1 second. Yeah. So what will be the module name? Actually, the module name is nothing but the module name is the class, this file name. Whatever the file name you given, it is used as module name. Right? From the module, you are importing this and you want to use this now. That means what we will do, let code is equal to use captcha, which is going to generate a random code. And I will just use this in my definition. Here I will use it. And what is it? Code. That means we are importing and we are using. Now, when you are using and it is going to generate some random code, we can have some refresh button, right? Usually, if I reload and it will get with a new code, every time it will get with a new code, it is going to get a new code. We can write the logic that I don't get a 10 number. You can write a condition. If it is 10, then minus 1. You can just put different logics. Usually this is not captcha. This is just to understand that how we can use the concept of a hook. That means, for example, any lengthy functionality you are regularly handling, then you can create a hook and use it. Now, many people have a doubt like, why I need to design like a hook? Why cannot use a function? Why I have to write a function also reusable now? General function is a reusable. But I already told you the situation. Why you cannot use a function? Function uses a single call mechanism. Service uses an singleton mechanism. Singleton mechanism. So hooks always work with the dependency injection and it uses a singleton pattern. Any purpose you can create a hook. For example, we want to fetch data from API and we want to use the data. Every time what we are doing, every time import axios.get fetch the data and store in some location, we can create a hook for that. So that means what we will do here, I will add another hook here. That means let's go to the hooks and you here create a new file. So fetch data. So fetch API, something, fetch API hook. Okay, .js. Now what it has to do? Now it is going to connect with Axios, get the data from the Axios and use. Now what we are doing, so export, we have a function and what is the function name? Function name is fetch So it is what? Use fetch. Actually, there is no use fetch, right? We have only fetch is there. Fetch is related to whom? It is related to JavaScript. You have XML, HTTP, it is related to JavaScript. So here I am using use fetch. Now what this use fetch has to do? It should get the data from an URL. It is expecting parameter. And what it should do is it should return the data coming from that particular URL. So here you can use Axios. Axios dot what? Get. Axios dot get. And when you get the data, we need to store the data. So here I will create a data and set data, and I can use set data, and I can use state here. Use state I can use here. This is an array. That means what is the point here? The point is I already given a point in the rules that you can use existing hooks in a hook, and you can build a hook. Now what it has to do? Get from where? Get from the URL, and dot then if it is success, then get the response, and set data, and set data response dot what? Data. And what we have to do is we need to return the data. That means you cannot have a void. It should always return. That means hook cannot be void. It must always return, and it returns the data that you collected from this location. Now, when it should do this, it should do this when the component mounts. That means what we have to do is we need to use effect. Use effect. That means at the time of mounting, you need to fetch this and assign. That means you can use this use effect mounting at the time of mounting. Here, when it should mount again, that means whenever you change the URL, suppose first time you pass the URL, it will load. After that, you make change in the URL, it will not load the new data. It will show only old. Why? Because use effect works how many times? Only once. How you can make it work every time? What is the dependency? Dependency is URL. What does it means? Whenever URL change, then load again. That is the dependency. Now we are using this dependency. That means whenever component mounts, it will mount only once. That means first time what URL you passed, it will get the data and display. Next time you make change in the URL, it will not load. Every change in the URL must load. That means now this mount should have a dependency. What is the dependency? URL. Now what we need to do is we have to use this in our component. Any component, for example, in this login component, actually it is not suitable for this login component, but just I am using. What we have to do? So we will create, I will create LET categories is equal to how to get all the categories. How do we get the categories? We will use, what is it? Use fetch. Use fetch is our own hook, and it is expecting URL. Now you type the URL https colon double slash what is it? fakestoreapi.com slash what? Products slash what? Categories. Categories. And what I am doing here is I am fetching the categories and displaying the categories. For example, in this is a div, just roughly. Okay, I'll do one more. Just roughly, I will create a data term categories, and I will use a data definition. I will put a drop down. Okay, and class as form select. In this drop down, I want to display those categories. That means what we are using? Categories dot map. We are using categories dot map, and we are reading every category. For every category, we are creating an option. In that option, we are displaying the category name. Category name, and we have a key. What is the key? Category. Okay, now you can see in this drop down the categories are there. the categories are there. Now the key point here is you don't have any Axios here. You are not using any Ajax methods here, but how you are getting the data. That means many times in real world projects, you will be surprised with this approach. That means you will see that there is no Axios, there is nothing, but data is coming. That means they are using some built-in hooks which are internally doing it. They are using some built-in hooks which are internally doing this. That means you will see that there is no there is no validation, nothing, but validation is working. That means they built a hook for validations. They built a hook for forms. They built a hook for various purpose. That means you can create your custom hooks. Now, if anybody asks like, do you know use fetch hook in React.js? How do I know what you created? There is no use fetch in React.js. Right? This is our own custom made hooks. That's how we design. So this is custom hooks, how we can create our hooks for different reasons. So I will give these examples into the notes, right? These two hooks, how we can create. Now we will see how to use the existing hooks. How we can use the existing hooks. That means already we learned only 3. Some more are there we need to know. That means we learned use effect, we learned about use state, and we learned about use ref. There are some more hooks that we will see in next session. So tomorrow we will learn about how to use the predefined hooks built by React. These are custom hooks. These examples I will give. So in this example, add a new folder. What is that? Hooks. And in that hooks folder, what we are doing? Add a new file. So add new files. We have 2 files. I will copy this code. One is fetch API, another one capture. I will give you these notes. You can try that, right? You can use. Now remember how that all depends on your JavaScript knowledge. You have to write the logic for every scenario. That means, so if one object is coming, what to do? If array is coming, what to do? So what to do? You do. What to do means, so why you are there then? If I have to do everything, that means you put your brain, you put the logic, and you try to implement that. You have to do that. I have just given some scenarios. The other scenarios you have to implement, right? Think about the scenario and you write the scenario, right? So I will share a classroom group. That means in today's notes, I will share a link. That link contains a classroom code. You join that Google Classroom code so that you can upload your examples there. That means whatever task you are doing, you can upload. In our today's notes, I will share a classroom link. Use that link and join that link. And by using that link, you can join into Google Classroom, not Google Drive. Google Classroom will be there. You can join and there you can upload your example so that I can check. Okay. Then tomorrow we'll continue, right? Yeah.